Good afternoon and welcome to Inside China Business. My name is Kevin Walmsley. I'm from the United States and I'm 56 years old as of today, May 2024. This is my 13th year living and working in China. I'm also a veteran. I was in the American Army for 9 years, Signals Intelligence Branch with tours of duty in Germany and in Hawaii. Most of my adult life I've been in business, mostly in asset management, capital markets, and private equity. I cannot speak Chinese, nor can I read it. Chinese is a tonal language. It has 4 tones, and I simply cannot hear the difference between them. And when I try to speak, nobody can understand me. Eventually I gave up, and thankfully technology eventually caught up with me, and I'm able to get along fine here with the translator apps on my phone. As an aside, if you cannot speak the language or understand it around you, or the signs, or the buildings, or the advertising, China is actually a pretty quiet place. For me, it's easy just to tune everything out, but when I go home, it's just a bombardment to my senses. It's all noise and light, and it's just exhausting. Just a few months old. I have a small group of close friends here who help me when I don't understand how something works and I need someone to explain it to me, and then I can explain it on screen. Banking procedures, the legal system, the process of getting a loan to buy a house, or how kids here decide what college to go to, things like that. And the tech and the engineering stuff especially. The nuts and the bolts of how things work, I need a lot of help with to understand. But I'm also intensely curious how the Chinese culture has changed, how their lifestyles have changed, and how their family relationships have changed. And they're helpful of all that too. And that's the most important part of the China story, and there isn't anybody talking about it. I looked for a long time for anything that could help me see and understand all that I was seeing happen all around me. And there is no such channel. And I could not be the only one who was curious, intensely interested in how it has all happened and why. So we started one. There are some other channels devoted to other things involving China, which are not interesting to me, not really. I'm not impressed by a shiny new airport, for example. I assume that an airport built since 2020 is going to be a new and modern airport. I'm just not interested. What does interest me is that Shanghai, for example, already has 2 big new modern airports, and they're building a 3rd one. 30 years ago, they barely needed 1, a small terminal in Hongqiao, and now they need 3 of the biggest airports in the world. That's what I want to know about. I'm not impressed or interested that China takes care of its poor people and there are no homeless people living on the streets. This is a basic function of government to ensure that the people whom the government serves have basic shelter and some food in their stomachs. It's the minimum we should expect. Hungry people, people who are cold, are going to ask for help. They'll ask stores, or they'll ask restaurants, or they'll ask people passing by to help them. So if you don't want lots of those people in your commercial business districts begging for food, this is a minimum. So I'm not impressed when any country does that. What is impressive is that 800 million people went from subsistence living to comfortably middle class in just 30 years. That is interesting, and that's what I want to know about. It is also not interesting, not impressive, that China builds a nice railroad so that Chinese can travel back and forth comfortably. It is most impressive that they built the biggest rail network on the planet in just 30 years. And more impressive still, that they're building railroads in Africa and in South America and across Asia when it will not be Chinese who are riding on those trains. How did China learn to build it all when they had no experience with skyscrapers or with airports or with modern ports, with electronics? Where did the money come from to build it all? How does China manage all that money that they earn abroad? How did the Chinese financial system go from zero, literally zero, foreign exchange reserves to the biggest pool of productive capital in the history of the whole world in just 25 years? And with $3 billion more going into that pool every single day. I thought I had, I should say, a very solid grasp of how capital markets work. I worked at the biggest investment banks in the world on Wall Street, and I don't understand how they did it. What they have done here is beyond belief. It's impossible. What else has happened in these past 30 years is that China has taken over one by one the key supply chains for everything. Every single industry, just about every single product in every industry, it doesn't get made without somebody in China performing some vital function in order to get it done. Chinese companies own and operate the mines all over the world, getting the ores out of the ground, the outbound logistics there, the ocean transport networks, the ports here, obviously, and the factories here, and the outbound logistics, again. It's all China, it's all new, and it's all in the past 30 years. And we're just trying to understand it all, how it all happened. The Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, for example, is just 11 years old. That's all. And it's already the most important project in the past 1,000 years. And it will be studied for the next 1,000 years. There has been nothing like it in all of human history. Nothing so transformative of entire economies and systems. It has reordered the world, and it's flipped alliances, and it's turned countries from most friendly to the United States to most friendly to China. When a Chinese government bureaucrat in Beijing talks to the People's Daily, which is a Chinese newspaper here, and he talks about how well the Belt and Road Initiative is going, I don't believe him. But when an investment banker in Santiago says it to the Wall Street Journal, or when a port manager in Peru says it to Bloomberg, or when a farmer in Brazil says so to Reuters, now I'm paying close attention. Because in the US, I'm from Florida, and I have neighbors from Chile, and from Peru, and from Brazil. Families who moved to the United States in the 1970s and 80s. But now, South American companies prefer to do business with China instead. And South American families are preferring to send their children to study in China instead. Just 12 years for all that. Just 12 years for Americans to fall out of favor across entire continents. So we observe all of this, and it is with hopelessness and despair and sadness that we see the condition of the United States now. If the United States were an aircraft in flight, all of the warning lights would be flashing red. And the voice would come on saying, pull up, low terrain. Everything is falling and crashing. We have record, historic low confidence in our own public institutions. Our confidence in government is collapsing. Confidence in public health is collapsing. Trust in public school education and in higher education, gone. Most of us assume that our own government is lying to us most of the time. That Wall Street is lying, that drug companies are lying, that journalists are lying, that the schools can't teach, that our medicines don't work, and public safety is a contradiction in terms. We also assume, wrongfully, that these are things that are fixable if only the next election goes the way we want it to, or we get a new judge on some court, that we can turn things around. But we can't. The problems we have are deep and structural and fatal. What are we certain of? How does money work? Since the very foundation of the world, how does it work up to now? The borrower is servant to the lender. Productive capital flows from the consumer to the producer. It flows from people who live above their means to people who live below their means. It flows from people who borrow and spend to those who invest and lend. And with money flows power, diplomatic power, economic power, technological power, military power. And lately, all the money and all the power is flowing. So it doesn't matter who wins the election in 6 months, swapping out pilots on a doomed aircraft where the wings have fallen off. Because it's not going to matter in New York or in Philadelphia or Baltimore or Detroit or Milwaukee or Chicago or Kansas City or Oakland or Minneapolis or St. Louis or dozens of other places where we have entire school districts where not a single child can read or write or do math at grade level. It's not going to matter soon enough in London or Singapore or Zurich or Hong Kong or even in New York, the great financial centers of the world, where more and more investors and governments realize that our debts will not be repaid. And so they'll be demanding hard assets instead of treasury bonds and dollars. They'll be demanding new business partners to replace American ones, new banks and financial systems to use instead of ours. This channel is designed as a library of sorts, even for contents of just temporary news value, like a new computer chip or a new government policy, for example. We try to explain it in a macroeconomic context and a long-term context, why it's important and newsworthy beyond just today. For each video, we also share links where the information can be found and independently checked for yourselves. By the way, that suggestion came from one of our viewers on a comment thread a few months ago. Terrific idea, thank you. And it is another way that our channel here is different from the others. Our videos are also as short as possible. My name is Kevin Walmsley, and I'm usually in Qingdao, so there's no need to say so. It's just another thing I got to remember to say anyway. And if I'm somewhere else, we'll put it on the yellow and red thingy at the very beginning. You can see for yourself what the weather is like, so I don't need to mention that either. YouTube runs advertisements at the beginning of each video, and then again for any video longer than 8 minutes, and then a third time for videos longer than 12 minutes. I hate watching videos that are interrupted by ads, so whenever possible, we keep them under 8 minutes. This means we make less money, but our videos are also less annoying. Our audience is 85% male, over the age of 40, business owners, executives, or professional in some other way, and we all have better things to do than to watch YouTube ads or videos that waste our time to push the length past 8 minutes or 12 so we can watch even more ads. So everything we say between good morning and be good, it needs to be there. There's no fluff. This video here is likely to go past 8 minutes, so I apologize for that in advance. One final difference. My friends and I here are Christians, active in churches and in ministries throughout Asia. Instead of doing the Patreon, buy me a coffee thing, we ask instead that you contribute money to one of them. We've got a link in the channel description to a group in Nepal that does wonderful work there. Also, in the background of many of our videos, we are praying for our viewers, for your health, also that God gives you wisdom in your families and in your businesses, and also that our leaders in government are granted wisdom to work for prosperity and for peace in the world. So thank you for watching. Be good.